Been a bit since we got a new open weight model that was worth looking at, and boy is what moonshot cooking worth looking at. This is the best tool calling model ever from what I have seen. Yes, not just open weight model, period. It's crushing on Humanity's Last Exam, getting a state-of-the-art score there, as well as on Browser Comp, and it's neck and neck with other great models like GPT-5 and Sonnet 4.5 when it comes to code stuff like SWE Bench Verified, Live Code Bench, etc. The model's kinda nuts. It's able to do 200 to 300 tool calls consecutively without a human interfering. That's so cool. And considering this is an open weight model, there's a lot of fun to be had. There are catches to all of this, especially the open weight part. Make sure you stay tuned until I talk about the licensing things that they're doing, which are one of the bigger catches. But man, I haven't been this excited for a new model drop in a minute. I've been playing with it a bunch over the last 2 days. I've been looking at all the other coverage and how other people are using it. Moonshot did offer me some credits for testing the model, but I chose to just spend my own money because I'd rather them not pay me when I'm covering their stuff, even if it's just with free credits. Nobody involved in this video is paying me except for today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Tuple, the best way to do pair programming. Ben, I'm trying to film the ad. I need to control my computer. We're actually using Tuple right now, which allows for Ben to not just, Ben, I'm trying to film the ad. Seriously though, it's so cool. We were just playing with it a whole bunch, and the amount that you can interact with your coworkers, even just sitting on the same couch, is mind-blowing. He can do whatever he wants on my computer. No, Ben, stop. We're both using it at the same time, and it's a simple app I installed, and now we can actually collaborate. Ben, stop trying to transfer money to your bank account. I pay you enough already. We were using it earlier with Cursor, and it was actually really cool that I could click buttons, but also draw on the screen, point at things, and just talk to my coworker. I've needed something like this forever. I've always been a big fan of pair programming, and there just isn't enough tooling for it. Stop screen sharing over Zoom and Slack when you could use something that actually is built for us as developers to collaborate and work together. When we were playing with this earlier, I was so impressed, I actually pulled out my phone and talked about it for a sec. So we were just testing out Tuple for the ad that you're probably watching now, and we can all say that was weirdly cool, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to be using this.
Yeah.
This is... Actually, check this one out, guys. Seriously.
Yeah,
We're not using Svelte. I know. Okay, Python maybe. Seriously, though, if you want to screw with your coworkers and also have a much better pairing experience, Tuple's blowing me away. Check them out now at soydev.link/Tuple and use code Theo at checkout for 90% off your first 3 months. So what do we need to know about Kimi K2 thinking? Well, obviously, it's the thinking version of a model they dropped previously, and it is kind of massive, both in the impact it might have, but also in the absurd size of the model. If we take a look at the weights over on Hugging Face, you'll see that this model is a bit absurdly large. The model's 594 gigs. It's a trillion parameters, which makes it the biggest open weight model ever made. It's Infor quantized, which should make it easy to run, but it's also a trillion parameters and 590 gigs, which is going to make it a lot harder to run. And right now, the only people running it that I've seen have been the Kimi team themselves over at Moonshot. Yeah. Looking at OpenRouter, you can see it's just Moonshot as a host right now. And they have split the hosts where they have the standard one that's relatively well priced at 60 cents per mil in and 250 per mil out, but it's only 18 TPS. And I've seen it go even lower than that. There's also a turbo version, which is significantly more expensive, double the input price almost at $1.15 in, and almost 4x the output price at $8 per million out. But you also get 85 TPS. The pricing's similar to GPT-5 for the speedy version, but the slow version is even slower than GPT-5. Honestly, the comparison between this and GPT-5 is kind of funny now that I think about it, because it behaves similarly. It's definitely a neck and neck race in a lot of ways. But OpenAI's GPT-5 provision is 30 TPS. And they also have the turbo version you can pick, which I don't even think is provided here. Yeah, they don't have it here. I know there's a way you can do faster GPT-5. I haven't played with that too much, but that split just is reminiscent of OpenAI. The similarity here is hilarious. It feels more and more like Moonshot's trying to be OpenAI. DeepSeek and to an extent GLM are trying to be the Claude and Claude Code type Anthropic play. And then Minimax, who's just kind of out here killing it. I really need to talk about the Minimax models more as well. But Kimi K2 thinking is the one that we're here to talk about, and there's a lot of good reasons why. When you look at the benchmarks, it's kind of nuts. It's the leading open weight model according to artificial analysis. And when you look at artificial analysis, it's kind of crazy that the second highest scoring model they have is an open weight model. That's nuts. Admittedly, their intelligence index isn't the best bench, but it is a real one that you can get value from, and seeing that get that far in is insane. But the speed is absolute garbage, so checks and balances. The other thing that's kind of garbage about how that run went is how many tokens it used. It used the highest number of tokens ever in the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, 140 million tokens. Kind of crazy. It's so token hungry. Really reminds me of Grok 4 and its chaos of just over tokenizing things. Like, token inflation is real. The more smart these models are with reasoning, the more they do shit like this. And you'll see the split of reasoning to non-reasoning tokens is not looking great. And 130 million reasoning tokens is absurd. For comparison, GPT-5 on high, so on the reason away mode, where you're telling it do more reasoning, it uses 82 million reasoning tokens, a bit over half as much. And 4.5 Sonnet only uses 34 million for comparison. Generally speaking, I've seen that the Claude models aren't too bad about overly reasoning compared to some of the other options. And they also, unlike a lot of the big labs, will give you all of the reasoning data. So props to Anthropic for that. Everybody else is obfuscating their reasoning. Obviously, open weight models, you can't do that, so they're not. But once you compare the token usage to cost, things get more interesting. GPT-5 suddenly gets much further along because it's expensive per token, not as expensive as many other models, but expensive enough to bump here. Same with Claude 4.5 Sonnet. Despite using half as many tokens, it's still the 5th most expensive option. Grok 4 will always be the king of costing too much money and giving you nonsense answers. Stay classy, Elon. But where do we have our new model? Oh, here we are. Kimi K2 Thinking, only $380, so comparable pricing to Claude 4.5 Haiku, despite crushing it in this benchmark, but also, from what I've seen, not being quite as good at code. I was trying it out for coding earlier using Kilo Code, and it generated a bunch of files for my image generation test, the fake image studio I love to make to see how the model does UI, and here's what it looks like. If you use Next.js, you might recognize this page, because this is the default page for actually starting a Next project, because it didn't actually touch that file. It didn't mount the components it created anywhere, so I can't actually see it. So let's give it a reminder that has to do that. You need to actually render the components you made on the homepage, LOL. Kind of as it touched the layout, it touched the CSS, it did a lot of little things, and then just didn't actually put the component on the page. Definitely not the best coding model for the actual implementation details that I've seen. Also a bit slow. That first request took like 10-ish minutes, if I recall. It was cheap, though. It was only 0.5 cents. When you see it thinking, you'll see it's chugging. It's moving. It was actually a lot slower before. They noticed that they were having performance issues and that OpenRouter was showing just how bad it was. The plot twist is that it wasn't their GPU count that was causing problems. It was IP bandwidth. So while this is generating, I want to talk about the other things the model does. The Moonshot team cares a lot about writing quality, which is kind of crazy when you consider the fact that this is a team based out of China and they're optimizing for English writing quality and consistency. I was curious what that would look like, so I gave a fun test prompt, asking it to write a compelling defense of the Java programming language that addresses the main things people hate about it. It reasoned for a while, it generated a result, it did it at about 12 TPS, and it actually reads pretty nice. Theo, let's be honest, Java's the language everyone loves to hate. It's the tech world's favorite punching bag, the enterprise software boogeyman, the verbose boilerplate factory that developers love to joke about. But here's the thing, most of the hate is rooted in a version of Java that hasn't existed for a decade. Modern Java is a stealth powerhouse, and the criticisms are increasingly outdated. Let me address the major concerns head on. Ridiculously verbose, old reality, new modern reality, code example. That's it. One line. Records gave us immutable data classes with constructors, equals, hash code, and toString automatically. Add pattern matching, and it's even more elegant. Okay, that is actually kind of nice. Don't tell me this model's convincing me on Java. For comparison, I ran the same prompt with reasoning on for GPT-5 and for Sonnet, and the first thing you'll notice, we're in bullet point and list hell. GPT-5 loves lists. But Sonnet's historically been a little better for writing. Nope, all fucking lists. Why is a Chinese model better at writing English in a compelling way than American-based companies making similar models? It's kind of nuts. Java gets a lot of flack, but most criticisms stem from outdated perceptions or misunderstandings of its design philosophy. Here's why Java deserves more respect. It's too verbose, but verbosity has value. Yes, Java is verbose, but verbosity is actually explicit clarity. No, this is not a good defense. And tons of bullet points. Java is slow. Welcome to 2024. This criticism stuck in 2004. The hotspot JVM is a performance marvel. Just cringe in comparison. Here's a candid defense of Java that tackles useful complaints head on. Short version. The Java you're picturing is 2005 Java. The Java people actually ship and run today is fast, modern, safer, and designed for teams that expect their code to live for a decade. This is not good. It's kind of weird, but I think Kimi K2 is going to be my default model on T3 chat for a while now. Speaking of which, if you want access to every single model, including the new Minimax M2 version, Polaris Alpha, which is a fun stealth model, as well as the new Kimi K2 Thinking with the turbo option enabled as well, for $8 a month, I have bad news because right now it's only $1 a month for your first month. Use code Kimi K2 at checkout and you'll get your first month for $1. Check it out now at T3 chat. We put a lot of work into this app. Okay, the code finished. Let's see how it looks now. Yeah, it looks. I wouldn't say it looks good, but it looks. I had a lot of people telling me the Kimi models are good at UI. I'm going to call them liars. That's so bad. Do you see that the title pop in there? Oh God, no. But code has more parts than just writing code. And I've heard really good things about using this model as a planning model. With tools like Kilo, you can set an architect, and you can even set multiple models to do the different parts, which is really fun, something I definitely want to play with more in the future. And I know other creators like AI Code King are leaning really heavily into that. I'll just grab a snippet from his video.
GPT-5 codex as my planning model. Bigger models have their own upsides. You get a very similar performance footprint to GPT-5 codex in my tests. I use GPT-5 codex a lot for planning. It's the best model for debugging and planning, and from my initial testing, it seems that I can use Kimi to replace GPT-5 codex as my planning model. Bigger models have their own upsides. They are great at debugging, as they are trained to understand what a ton of errors mean and how to fix them. They are generally quick.
Code King's video on the model is really good and definitely helped me get prepared to cover this myself. If you want a deep dive on how it performs in all sorts of code tasks, definitely go check his video out. Very good stuff. One more thing, because I was just so curious. I ran this against Skatebench because if it's good at writing and thinking and English, it should be good at this, right? And it got a 60%, which is a pretty dang good score. It's the best open weight model at naming skate tricks ever made by far. DeepSeek's surprisingly good. I've mostly seen that the Chinese models are really bad at this. I actually had a lot of researchers reach out to me because of how poorly models like Qwen and GLM were performing on this before I had shared details of the benchmark itself. A lot of people wanted to see it because it's hard to measure that gap. And in most benchmarks, Qwen and GLM just benchmax and win, even though using them sucks. And this is one of the few benches that they said made it clear there was a distinction between those models, which was an accident by design. But yeah, it's cool. And I like that people see value in that. The costs were also very interesting. Kimi K2 Thinking is one of the more expensive models I've run through this bench, which, yeah, I thought was fascinating. GPT-5 is actually surprisingly cheap with this because it doesn't do a whole lot of reasoning during it. And then Gemini 2.5 Pro and Grok 4 are quite expensive in comparison. You'll see how far off Grok 4 is in the corner there, whereas GPT-5 costs 7 cents. Kimi K2 Thinking costs a lot more because it did a shitload of reasoning, but still got a pretty good score. Just interesting. Not necessarily the best benchmark, but I think it's cool. That's why I made it. And the results are fascinating. Still kind of crazy to me that Chinese models are dominating so much in writing use cases. This is the role-playing category on OpenRouter. In DeepSeek 3.1 and V3 are two of the biggest models for role play, which is hilarious to me. R1 is still up here as well. Yeah, very interesting. So not too surprising to see this pattern, but still, in my opinion, very interesting. A couple more things I want to cover before we get to the license stuff, which make sure you're here for that because that's an important detail that is either not being covered or covered incorrectly from everyone I've seen so far. This is a great article from Interconnects, and it touches on a lot of things, but one of the interesting pieces is the interleaved thinking for agentic tool use. This is a new pattern that Anthropic's been supporting for a bit that allows a model to start thinking again during a reply. Instead of having to start a whole new reply from scratch, it can instead just kick to reasoning for a bit and then do the next thing. Sadly, most tools don't support this, including OpenRouter, which means if you're testing with OpenRouter, you're not seeing this. And if you're using things like OpenCode or Kilo Code, you're also not getting this. Supposedly, Kimi's CLI is also broken right now. I haven't had a chance to play with it, and the last thing I need is yet another AI CLI for testing stuff. I've heard that when you hack Claude Code to use it, it can do that and works pretty well. I've not had a chance to try that myself, but it's worth trying if you're curious. The only models I know that support this so far are Claude, Minimax, and now Kimi K2 Thinking. So cool to see more support for this. I'm expecting this pattern to get much more common going forward, especially with the next year. The core reaction of this release is people saying that it's the closest that open models have been to the closed frontier of performance ever, since similar to DeepSeek R1's fast follow to O1. This is pretty true, but we're heading into murky territory because comparing models is harder. This is all advantaging the open models, to be clear. I've heard Kimi's servers are already totally overwhelmed. More on that soon. Yeah, that's a real problem. You'd think that since this is a big open weight model that's everyone's hyped about, everyone would be supporting it right now. But no one is yet. That's because it's a giant model with a lot of fun quirks in the hosting. The int4 thing does make it easier, but also harder if your infrastructure is not provisioned for it. And on top of that, the Moonshot guys have been very strict about how vendors are verified. Anyone can host the model, of course, but due to the fact that they're going so hard on tool calls, and a lot of infra providers don't have tool calling behaving correctly, and I've been to hell and back with this, by the way, trying to get search tools working across every model, especially the OpenRouter ones, on T3 chat has not been fun because different model providers will honor or not honor the syntax in different ways. So the Moonshot team has a verifier that they built for actually benchmarking the different providers and seeing how many of them can consistently correctly call tools. Here are all the providers that go over 80% consistency, and then some others, even ones I really like Grok with a Q, are only hitting 68-ish%. So yeah, obviously the Moonshot official hosting will be the most reliable. So it looks like Deep Infra is slightly beating them, which is cool. And then a lot of other hosts here that vary in their consistency with it. Turns out hosting these models and getting them working with all of these specific behaviors isn't easy, and it can take a month or two for everything to settle. So I wouldn't expect other providers to have this working well for a little bit. So if you're sensitive about who gets your data, because again, Moonshot.ai is Chinese, you might have to wait this one out a little bit. God, there's so many things I want to talk about with this model. It's very interesting. This article by Interconnects is really good. Thank you, Nathan, for writing this. Lots of little gems in here, including a link to how Kimi K2 did reinforcement learning on qualitative data in order to fix the writing. Like, they do really care about making the writing good, and it shows. It's one of the best writing models I've used, and it will probably be my default for chatting for a bit now. Apparently, training this model only cost $4.6 million. To be clear, that cost is just for the one run that produced this particular set of weights. There's a lot of other costs to consider with these things, but when you also consider the fact that they're giving this out for free, it's pretty nuts. It's really cool that you can just get this type of work, download it, and use it how you want, even if it's hard to run. There is a catch, though, and this is where we need to talk about the license. This is a modified version of the MIT license, which is the exact same up until line 22, where they say, and they even say that this is the only modification. Our only modification part is this: if the software or any derivative works thereof is used for any of your commercial products or services that have more than 100 million monthly active users or more than 20 million US dollars or equivalent to other currencies in monthly revenue, then you shall prominently display Kimi K2 on the user interface of such product or service. Interesting addition. This means that if other services were to start using Kimi K2 and have a certain number of users, it's expected that they prominently display the fact that Kimi K2 is powering it. This makes certain cases weird, like if I was to distill Kimi K2 or try to fine-tune it in a specific way and make my own product around it, do I still have to call it Kimi K2? How do I walk the lines there? Interesting questions. That all said, you probably should know what model you're using when you're using something that has an LLM behind it. And also, we're already compliant on T3 chat, so you don't know if we make more than $20 million a month. You can probably guess, though. We're not that rich. That all said, not the worst thing to add to one of these. Even the Llama models have license callouts like this. It's pretty cool that they're just providing these files for free and letting you do what you want with them. And most services are probably going to put the name of the model anyways. I get why they're doing this. I think it's reasonable. I wish there was a better call out about what like fine-tuned and like post-training would look like for it, but this is fair. I expect more and more of these open weight models to do this type of thing in the future. Couple more quick things from this article because I think it's really good and worth reading through. First point is that open models release faster, which has been really interesting to say. The gap in performance between closed and open models is closing, and a lot of that's just coming from the speed that models are coming out. We are actively waiting for OpenAI to drop 5.1, which we've seen a lot of rumors about recently, and I have no idea where the fuck Google is. Like, where is Gemini 3? I've heard rumors that it's coming out in this week as early as like September, and it feels like it just keeps getting delayed. When the pace of progress is high, being able to get a model out sooner makes it look better. Absolutely. A lot of these innovations are happening across all the labs, but whoever gets the model out first looks like the biggest innovator. Like, they're not the inventors of interleaved reasoning, but they're one of the first to do it, so it'll look like they're big on it. Another interesting piece is key benchmarks first, user behaviors later. This is a thing that the labs in China have been focused on a lot, is getting the best possible benchmark scores. Some of them can also have good taste like DeepSeek and Kimi, but a lot of them don't. This is why I've been kind of harsh on Qwen for a while. It would win benchmarks, but it genuinely sucked to use at all. But over the last year, we've seen Qwen go through this transition. Their models were originally known for benchmaxing, but now they're legitimately fantastic to use. They still do have those insane benchmark scores. Along this line, the K2 thinking model was post-trained natively with a 4-bit precision to make it far more ready for real serving tasks. They likely did this to make scaling the reinforcement learning more efficient in post-training on long sequences. Chinese labs are killing it. At the start of the year, nobody knew any of them. I mean, at the end of last year, I was a big fan of DeepSeek. I love those guys still. I think that the research they're posting is incredible. I know they don't have the best model right now, but that was never their goal. It seemed like they really just wanted to focus in on the research and how we make the models. And R1 was more a demo of how their new way of thinking worked, and everyone's copied it since. And then the interleaved thinking piece. One of the things people are talking about this release is how Kimi K2 thinking will use hundreds of tool calls when answering a query. From the blog post, Kimi K2 thinking can execute up to 200 to 300 sequential tool calls without human interference, reasoning coherently across hundreds of steps to solve complex tasks. This is the first open model to have the ability of many, many tool calls, but it's something that has been somewhat standard with the likes of O3, Grok 4, etc. Grok 4 is not good at this. That's a fucking lie. The sort of behavior emerges naturally during RL training, particularly for information, when the model needs to search to get it in the right answer. So this isn't a huge deal technically, but it's fun to see in an open model. Seriously, like, this is one of those things that just takes a lot of money and time to do, to keep on like rerunning the model over and over again until it does the tool call right, and then rewarding it for that and getting it to behave with these weird structures and shapes and JSON syntaxes to do tools. It's really cool to have this in an open weight model. Yeah. And the interleaved thinking being supported is really fun as well. The easiest way to like think of that is you take a normal model that doesn't have it, it thinks, it outputs, you rerun it, it thinks, it outputs, you rerun it, it thinks, it outputs, and then you take those results and then feed that back in as reinforcing data, and the result is that it can now do that by itself. Similarly, parallel tool calling is becoming a thing the same way. And all of this is putting pressure on the American labs. Expect to see a lot more of the labs shipping now, both because this is the end of the year. If they don't get it out now, they have to wait till next year. But also, this is scary as hell for all of them. Remember, the only lab that has a model that scores higher than Kimi K2 thinking on artificial analysis is OpenAI. Everything else is behind right now. And in some benches, Kimi K2 is the smartest we've ever seen. The fact that they're providing this as an open weight model for us to go use and play with is so cool and genuinely advances the state of the art for the industry forward, even if the output of the code that I'm getting for it isn't that great so far. I'm excited as hell about this model. I'm going to be daily driving this in T3 chat for a bit. I'm very curious how you guys feel if you end up using it too. Am I too hyped about this, or is it actually a pretty cool model? Let me know what you think. And until next time, peace nerds.